This rich and wealthy lady fell in love with a common poor guy who pretended to be classy. Let's see what she did when she found out. Kindly subscribe to this channel for more of our latest stories. One day, a young man named Oliver was caught sleeping at work. His colleague Festus came to wake him up. Festus had brought bread and Fanta, and as they sat to eat, Oliver displayed a rather dirty habit. Suddenly, he remembered that he hadn't delivered a customer's clothes, so he quickly rushed out. On the other side of the story, the gatekeeper named Garba arrived with a young lady named Elizabeth, who was looking for work. Elizabeth was amazed by the beauty of the company premises. Once inside, Garba began coaching her on how to behave properly. He then went to call his madam, Chantel, who had already noticed through her CCTV that Elizabeth couldn't seem to stay in one place. Garba tried to assure Madame Chantel that Elizabeth was not a child, though Chantel found that hard to believe. Elizabeth, however, spoke confidently for herself, stating her abilities. Garba excused himself as Madame Chantel laid down the rules and regulations. Elizabeth confessed that some of the rules might be difficult to follow. Chantel then showed her to her room. Later that day, while Elizabeth was enjoying some time in the living room, a young woman named Martha, a friend of Chantel, arrived. Elizabeth, unaware of who Martha was, behaved rudely toward her. Martha quickly put Elizabeth in her place before leaving. Guys, having someone like Elizabeth as a staff member is both hilarious and frustrating, but let's see what happens next. The next day, Chantel called Elizabeth and gave her a work uniform, insisting she start wearing it immediately. Elizabeth went to her room to change. On another day, while Chantel was on a business call, she asked Elizabeth to bring her a glass of juice, but there was no response. After searching the house, she was shocked to find Elizabeth outside using traditional methods to cook party jollof rice. Chantel scolded her, warning her never to do such a thing again in her house. Although Elizabeth didn't see anything wrong with it, she agreed to follow the rules and walked away quietly. Later, in the living room, Chantel was visibly upset with Elizabeth's attitude. Martha tried to calm her down, suggesting that Elizabeth might actually be a perfect match for her. Meanwhile, Elizabeth had already served the food and called Chantel to eat. When Martha tried to join, Elizabeth bluntly told her she wasn't included. Chantel had to caution Elizabeth again about her rude behavior. At the dining table, Martha tasted the food and admitted it was delicious. She persuaded Chantel to try it. Chantel did eat, though she still pointed out minor flaws. Nevertheless, she admitted that she liked Elizabeth and believed they could get along. Elizabeth later returned to ask if she wanted more, but Chantel, still irritated, shouted at her to leave. Martha tried to console her friend. Later that day, Elizabeth went to meet Garba, who had fallen fast asleep after enjoying a delicious meal. She asked him whether Madam had a husband or a boyfriend. Garba told her that Madam didn't have either, explaining that she was too harsh and most men couldn't tolerate her attitude. Elizabeth expressed her concern, but when Garba heard Madam calling for Elizabeth, he quickly hid her in his room. A few days later, Chantel was on a call, enjoying a pleasant conversation with a friend. When she was done, she went into the kitchen, only to find Elizabeth using one of her expensive dining chairs as a step stool while cooking. Chantel confronted her, and Elizabeth talked back, even mentioning Chantel's family. Furious, Chantel threatened to fire her if she ever spoke to her like that again. Despite the warning, Elizabeth continued to get on her nerves, and Chantel stormed out angrily. Meanwhile, at the laundry workshop, a customer complimented Festus on a job well done, as Oliver prepared to deliver some clothes to a client. The next day, Martha was with Chantel, who opened up about her high standards and expectations, something that had driven many men away. Still, Chantel said she'd rather stay single than settle for someone who doesn't meet her standards. Later, Chantel scolded Elizabeth harshly over a small mistake. Elizabeth, in turn, played a prank on them that Chantel fell for, and she laughed about it while continuing her conversation with Martha. Moments later, Elizabeth approached Madame Chantel for a serious talk. Though Chantel took her time to listen, Elizabeth eventually shared her thoughts, telling her madam that she was getting older each day. And though she had everything money could buy, the value of having her own children was something she couldn't purchase. She advised Chantel that in order to have children, she would need to allow herself to be involved with a man. With that, Elizabeth left. Later that day, Oliver came to deliver some clothes to Chantel. Her previous maid had taken the clothes but had never returned, as she had been fired. Oliver explained the situation to the gateman, who allowed him in. Inside, Oliver admired the beautifully furnished house. He called out, but got no response. When he heard a noise upstairs, he went up and accidentally stumbled into Chantel, whom he caught by the waist to prevent her from falling. He quickly apologized and explained the reason for his visit. Elizabeth, who had come to see what was happening, insisted he was a thief. Chantel became angry, threatened to have him arrested for touching her waist, and ordered him to leave without giving him any money. As Oliver was leaving, Garba almost picked a fight with him, but Oliver managed to escape. Oliver explained to Festus what had really happened, but Festus downplayed his actions, especially the part about entering other areas of someone's house. The next day, Chantel was at home, thinking about her moment with Oliver. She realized she was beginning to develop feelings for him. Coincidentally, Oliver was also thinking about her. Festus comforted him, saying everything would fall into place, then left. One day, Chantel brought out some dirty clothes and insisted Elizabeth call the laundry guy to come pick them up. She told her to get the number from Garba. When Elizabeth started asking too many questions, it made Madame Chantel lose her temper and shout at her. After finishing her chores, Elizabeth stepped outside and saw Oliver. She spoke to him rudely and became even more disrespectful as the conversation went on. She walked away, leaving Oliver surprised by her attitude. Later that same day, in the room, Martha confronted Chantel for rejecting the man she had introduced to her for one reason or another. Not long after, Oliver walked in, and Chantel began blushing and playfully touching him, insisting he save her number. After he left, Chantel opened up to Martha about her interest in him. Martha was shocked, especially after realizing that Oliver was the same guy who had once held Chantel by the waist. Chantel then left the room to give Oliver the duvet. Honestly, I'm also surprised. What did Chantel see in Oliver that caught her interest? Well, let's see how long it lasts. Later that day at work, Oliver told his colleague about how Chantel was all over him and even sent him a generous amount of money. He admitted that he had presented himself confidently in front of her. He and his colleague laughed and shared the moment together. A few hours later, Chantel called Oliver, insisting he bring her clothes later that day. He promised to be there shortly. Oliver arrived looking well-dressed to deliver the clothes. Elizabeth tried to send him away, claiming it was too late, but Chantel came out and scolded Elizabeth for the way she treated guests. She told her to behave appropriately. When Elizabeth realized all her effort in the kitchen was for Oliver, she became frustrated. Chantel called her away and then invited Oliver to join her for dinner, asking him to bring the clothes to her bedroom afterward. Surprised, Oliver agreed. At the dining table, Chantel became upset with Elizabeth for making iba and egusi soup instead of jollof rice. However, Oliver didn't mind and appreciated Elizabeth's effort. He even asked her to bring him cutlery, saying he didn't want to eat with his bare hands. Chantel was impressed by his humility. After dinner, they went to her bedroom and spent a pleasant time together. From that day forward, Chantel and Oliver began going out more often and spending more time together. Most of the time, Elizabeth could only watch in the background as they enjoyed each other's company. Considering Oliver is someone who doesn't like to make a mess and also struggles with proper English, do you think Chantel will still be interested in a relationship with him after everything that has happened? Let's wait and see how it all ends. One day, Oliver brought his girlfriend to meet his friend Festus. Festus greeted her in pidgin English but quickly corrected himself. After she left, Oliver and Festus shared a moment together where Oliver expressed how deeply he loved her and how he was planning to marry her. The next day, Chantel called Elizabeth and told her that she liked Oliver. She asked Elizabeth's opinion about him, and Elizabeth gave a positive response. Weeks later, Oliver proposed to Chantel, and she said yes. On a particular day, Martha was on her way out when she saw Oliver at a roadside restaurant. She was surprised and drove straight to Chantel's house, where she told her what she had seen in front of Elizabeth, questioning why Chantel would lower herself to such a level. Chantel, who was in the middle of planning her wedding, listened to Martha's judgmental words but insisted she was going ahead with the wedding. She ended the conversation by asking Martha to leave her house. Martha felt embarrassed and left. A few days after the wedding, Chantel looked sad because her best friend hadn't attended the ceremony. Oliver noticed and comforted her, reassuring her that he would always be by her side as they enjoyed their new life together. The next morning, Chantel was preparing to leave for a business meeting. When Oliver woke up, he asked her to stay a bit longer. He then spoke in pidgin English, which turned her off. She expressed her displeasure, and he apologized before she left. Later in the kitchen, Oliver was helping Elizabeth cook. She noticed how fluent he was in pidgin English. Amused, she promised not to expose his secret, and the two became good friends. A while later, Oliver joined his wife at the dining table, but he didn't act like a gentleman. Instead, he started chatting with Elizabeth in pidgin English. Chantel felt irritated and got up from the table. Oliver followed her and pleaded with her not to walk out like that again. Eventually, they both returned to enjoy their meal. Another day, while Oliver was watching TV, Chantel called out to him angrily because he had used the restroom and forgotten to flush. This led to a huge argument between them, with Oliver expressing how tired he was of her constant complaints. Elizabeth was shocked at how often they got on each other's nerves since they got married. Eventually, Chantel visited her best friend Martha and poured out all her frustrations about the marriage. Martha reminded her that she had warned her, but Chantel hadn't listened. Martha comforted her and encouraged her to consider leaving the marriage. Guys, this is why you need to show your spouse who you truly are before getting married, so they will know who they are dealing with. That night, Chantel came to apologize to her husband for her wrongdoing, which he accepted. However, it took a while, and while they were enjoying their time together, later in Chantel's room, Oliver tried to have a moment with his wife, but since he hadn't bathed, she refused to let him get close. Oliver got frustrated and expressed himself in pidgin English, telling her he was tired. He made her understand that he had pretended to be the perfect man for her because he overheard her conversation with Martha. He confessed that because he liked her, he had been pretending. He insisted she accept him for who he truly was. However, because Chantel had been warned about this, she immediately chased him out. The next day, Oliver went to see his friend, who told him he had made a mistake by lying to his wife from the start. Although Oliver was scared, his friend encouraged him. Since they were already married, everything would eventually work out. His friend urged him to go apologize to Chantel. At the office, Martha consoled Chantel, who cried endlessly. The following day, Oliver came to plead with his wife for forgiveness, but she didn't say a word to him. Garba chased him out. Oliver then went to his friend's laundry shop and told him how Chantel had ignored him. Festus consoled him and explained that she loved him too, but had high standards. He advised Oliver to take things slowly to win her heart back. The moment passed. The next day, Oliver waited outside for Elizabeth, who told him how badly Chantel was behaving and repeated what Festus had told him, that he should have hidden his identity. Elizabeth offered him some advice, promising to take care of her madam as she went inside. One day, Martha came to see Chantel, who was still wallowing in self-pity. Martha told her about a man who was a bank manager and tried to persuade her to move on with someone else. However, Chantel refused to cheat on her husband because she cared about what people would think. She went to her room, and Elizabeth sent Martha out of the house. Later the next day, Elizabeth came to see her madam to have a word with her. She told her how her mother ran away from her dad with her when she was little, just because he slapped her. Despite loving him, she refused to go back because of her pride, and it hurt her so much that, to this day, she doesn't know her father. She is in pain. Elizabeth used this as a lesson for her madam, advising her not to be like her mother. However, her madam left the table without eating her food. One particular day, Festus began to nag at Oliver because of complaints from some customers, one of whom was waiting outside for him. They exchanged words, and when Oliver went to check, he was surprised to see his wife. He apologized to her, and she made him understand that she was actually the problem. She began speaking pidgin English like they usually did, and also informed him about her pregnancy. They all enjoyed the moment together. Days later, Oliver, his wife, and Elizabeth had a meal together, using a local style to eat pounded yam and egusi soup. The story teaches us to be ourselves, not to pretend to be something we're not, just to make people like us. No matter the mistakes, it takes two willing hearts to make a marriage work. Never look down on people, say no to negative friends, and lastly, strive to be successful. So guys, if you enjoyed this story, kindly subscribe to this channel to get more of our latest stories.